Welcome, friends, to Tanked Up, the podcast about video games, beer, shitty internet, phones being slow, and various other things. I'm one of your hosts, Ben. Did I say it was episode 292? Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. Who knows? I'm here with Aadil.
Hey!
Hello, sir.
It's going to be one of those, eh?
Yes, absolutely one of those.
Sadly, Lucy is, I was going to say not with us, but that's a little more extreme sounding than I meant. Lucy is still recovering. So here we are.
Yeah.
Just the two of us.
Just the two of us. Let's have a nice evening, hang, chat, drink some beers, talk about whatever we like for however long we like, essentially. Let's open some beers, as we usually do first. I'm going to go first this week. I got a beer from Newtown Park. It's one I hadn't seen before. It's a 6.9% IPA. But I don't know whether they're fans of Microsoft and Xbox. But this beer is called Infinite Horizons. I think you're drawing on all of their things, that have just come out or coming out. Whether it's just a massive coincidence, who knows? But there's a little bit of flavour text, packed with heaps of flaked oats and wheat for a soft body, along with a heavy dry hop of Cryo, Simcoe, Amarillo, and Centennial. It's a party full of ripe peach, gooey, juicy mangoes, fresh grapefruit zest, and you're all invited. It's also got Sabro and Mosaic in it. That's everything. Yeah, nice.
Nice.
What are you drinking this week?
I've got this lovely looking can. It's like a smoky sea, cloudy green tinge scape from, it's the Sur Citra from Tuol. It's Dryhopped sour pale ale. Is 5.5%.
Nice.
As always, Tuol doesn't really say a lot on the tin.
Yeah. I will get mine poured. As soon as I cracked it, the nose sort of rushed out, even after I hadn't sort of fully cracked the can. It was already seeping out. I'll try and both pour on screen together. A little glass for me, so it doesn't all quite fit in. But that already instantly really clear. Wow. Look at that little haze to it. Not much, but super carbonated. Nice foamy thick head on there. But it does have that lovely light sort of peachy nose, definitely. A little bit, as I say, a little bit of sort of mango in there as well. Oh, that's a lovely easy beer to drink.
Excellent.
Oh, it really does have those sort of, instant elements that they sort of say to you. There is a lot of peach in there. There's maybe, they say gooey, juicy mangoes, which kind of makes me think that it's going to have a little bit more of a cloying, kind of thicker mouthfeel than perhaps it does, which it is very sort of, not thin, but it's medium-bodied. Some of that maybe, there is a little bit, a touch of thickness to it, which is maybe sort of the oats and a little bit of the malt just picking up to give it that little bit of thickness in there. But it's not quite gooey, juicy mangoes. But it's definitely got a nice mango hit to it. And it does say grapefruit zest on there. There is a kind of a hint right towards the end of that grapefruit, and it leads into maybe not necessarily zesty for me. It's not quite what I'm picking up, but it kind of helps it just edge with a little bitter finish as that grapefruit just picks up. And again, yeah, I can see why they've said maybe zesty rather than grapefruit, because it is just a little hint that's kind of just sat on the tongue a little bit, but just turns the beer a touch kind of bitter. But this is incredibly easy. This is very good. I'm just going to sit here and enjoy this. I'm done. Bye. Thanks.
All right. Well,
I mean, there's not much more to say about it than that. It does what it says on the tin. It's very, very good. It feels like it tastes very good. The mouthfeel is nice. So yeah, we can come straight into the 2-0.
Excellent. So you saw the pour. It's much hazier, much more less transparent than yours. A little more
Yes.
orangey,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
thinking. Almost no head off the pour, and like now, one short beer description later, just nothing, right?
Mm.
I'm getting really lovely, I want to say, bit of passion fruit and citrus off the nose. I mean, it's a dry hop sour pale ale.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm getting almost a sour grape off of the, like just like a grape peel sourness off of the
Yeah.
nose as well. Really, really pleasant. It's dry hopped, but not but like again, it's nice and delicate. But yeah, I'm getting sweet citrus a little bit there on along with that tartness.
Mm. It's
Ooh.
definitely a beer just from its sort of the colour of it and the way it looks does sort of suggest, more than a pale. That the sourness is probably doing kind of, say, a little bit more than giving it a tang, perhaps.
Tang's a good word.
Mm.
Because it's got a nice tart, tangy finish.
Mm-hmm.
But it's thick tasting. Was it 6%? Did I say? I don't remember.
I was less than that. I think 5
Five and a
point
half.
something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
5.5%. But it tastes much stronger.
Hmm.
It's that sourness is just thickening the flavor. It tastes it sort of get the flavor is nice and juicy and thick. That it's tricking me on the mouthfeel. The mouthfeel is actually, if you really pay attention, thinner than it seems.
Mm-hmm.
But it does coat the tongue, and you get this lovely, sweet citrus and then tartness right on the tip of your tongue. And then as it fades, you get there's that almost like I said, sour grape tartness, but it's like supported by the tropical fruit as well.
Hmm.
Bring Yeah, so it's got this like surge of the sweetness is just enough to make the flavor bigger, but it still tastes tart sort of all the way through. And the finish is quite interesting. My brain keeps saying, is that aspartame-y on the finish? But it's not. There's something similar, though.
Okay.
And then as that fades, you get a hint of that citrus sweet again, and then it sort of leaves the mouth a little drier than I'd like. But again, that citrus sweetness is there. I'm just like I'm trying to place what that thing is. But anyway, it's really quite pleasant. Quite unique for in the beers. I haven't tasted something like this in a while.
Hmm. It's been a while since we've had 2 old as well, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, so you know how aspartame does feel kind of like a bit salty as an aftertaste? I think that's what it is. There's just a bit of a hint of saltiness at the end. And I think that's what why my brain keeps saying aspartame.
Is there anything in the ingredients list that might just allude to kind of anything additional that's been sort of put in like that? Whether there's some sea salt or something in there just to balance out the sourness and bring it back into being, say, a pale or a sour pale, rather than it just being a sour.
Contains malted barley and oats, alcohol 5.5%, net content 440, sea bottom. Yo.
Okay, well, sure.
Yeah.
We'll leave 2 old to their ingredients. They don't want to tell us what they are. It's fine.
Yeah, I do think it is a saltiness, though. Just because now that it's been sitting off my palate for a bit, I do feel like like when someone sprinkles a bit of sea salt or something on a chocolate or whatever. Like it's that sort of light saltiness that I'm talking about. That just sort of seems to be opening the flavor up, but you just get a hint of it afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's really quite interesting and quite good.
Lovely. Nice. I will just make a further comment on this Newtown Park Infinite Horizons. It is quite dry. like all of these flavors don't elicit this sort of dry beer. You know, that nice sort of stone fruit kind of flavors that are coming through with this. Makes it feel sort of very wet, very juicy, and then suddenly, again, coming back to that bitterness of that grapefruit and the idea of maybe it being more zesty than the sort of juicy fruit itself, it suddenly just goes whoof, and just that dryness kicks in and leaves me with this very pleasant aftertaste of all of those. You know, that the peach comes back, the mango kind of sits in there as well, but really light. Like it's sort of like it dries, it takes almost all of that flavour away, but just leaves a tiny hint of what the beer was. So it's a kind of a dryness where it's inviting me to go back to it. It's telling me to go back to it as well. It's kind of doing both of the things that sort of dryness in some beers does. So yeah, it's just kind of drawing me back in to experience all of those flavours again. So yeah, nice.
Excellent.
Let's enjoy these. We will drink them. We'll have further thoughts on them later in the episode. But we should jump into games or anything we want to talk about kind of in the world of gaming. I've had another very, very light week in games, having had an absolutely insane work week again, which isn't going to let up anytime soon. So I thought, as kind of a topic, because I know you yourself as well have had these moments in time where you've not fallen out with gaming necessarily, but other things have taken sort of priority.
Yeah.
And
it's definitely taken the back seat in my life.
Yeah. And I, you know, there have been times in my life where gaming has taken a back seat. We've talked about this before in previous episodes, you know, go 150 episodes back, 200 episodes back or something like that. And we have had a few conversations around this, but I feel like I'm coming into one of those stages again where gaming absolutely is taking a bit of a back seat. And whilst I'm, you know, doing kind of everything else, Lucy's in the chat and she says video games are for children. Yes, Lucy, you are right. Children and large children like ourselves. But when the adult world comes a calling, we got to put them down. So yeah, I feel like at the moment I'm
children.
No, the games. It depends. Sometimes it depends. If you have children, they occasionally don't want you to put them down. So you have that to contend with as well. But yes, I'm coming into this phase, and I've always found that whilst I've had those moments where I'm like, I'll play this, I'll play a bit of this, I'll play a bit of this, I'll play a bit of this, I'll play that, and I can jump very nicely between lots of games. At the moment, I'm finding that I kind of have to concentrate on one. And I know last week I said that I played, chatted about Inscription a little bit, and I'd kind of delved back into Crusader Kings 3. That wasn't short-lived, but has definitely been a cool, play a little bit, right? I'll put that down now. And I haven't kind of been back to either of those. And part of that is because I said last week I was going to start Resi 7 as well. So I've sort of jumped into Resi 7 a little bit. I played maybe an hour and a little of that. And I don't know whether it's just my general sort of mindset, whether things are kind of changing for me, but suddenly nothing's kind of grasping me either. You know, the idea that when I had these moments before, you know, either through university or whatever point, that I go, right, I'm just going to focus on, you know, one big game's come out, that's pretty much all I'm going to play. You know, The Witcher 3 came out, didn't play anything else, played The Witcher 3. That was kind of it, and it held me. Whereas now, I'm kind of like, I'm at a point where I'm kind of thinking, I don't really have the time to play much. But again, nothing is kind of grabbing me. And I don't know whether part of that has come from having less time and my mind already ticking over the idea of being like, right, I need to, you know, I can't dedicate as much time to it. Maybe I don't feel like I can get into it quite as much and that sort of thing. So again, I wanted to ask you from your experience, whether you've had sort of moments like that, you know, whether those things have kind of come hand in hand, or you've found, different times where it's like, no, I just can't play those, just can't play it. Nothing to do with what the game is or whether I would want to. I just don't have the time to do it. Or whether you find it's kind of a combination of these things.
I'd say a bit of all of it. I think the when your time is like at a premium, I think it's very easy to not think of the immediate. I have time to play an hour of a game.
Mm-hmm.
That's ultimately, games are entertainment. So if I never play this game again outside of this hour, it's done its job, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
It's really easy to try and project forward. Oh, but if I start this game, even if it's 5 hours, where am I going to find the 5 hours?
Yes.
And I think you mentioned The Witcher 3. I mean, everyone, other co-hosts and guests all will continue to tell me I'll rue the day that I keep admitting I've not played the game, right? I've owned it since very early on, but I was in the middle of the PhD and I had some personal stuff going on, and it just seemed daunting. And then even when I sort of got to a place where I was playing games again, it was sort of on the backlog. There was hype for other things, and it was still supposed to be, 100 odd to, tens of hundreds of hours. And I just couldn't, right? Still see, even today, where don't have as much going on, it just seems like a lot. And I'm getting better about that. That's what, like, my 2021 Odyssey has been, finding space to play games again. But it took me a couple years to get back in the saddle. So I think part of it is, like, the very human, sort of the same part of your brain that is responsible for anxiety, the projecting forward thing, is just like, well, this seems like a big commitment. Because you want to like any game you start, you want to like, and any game you think you're going to like, you're going to want to finish.
Yep.
This is not most people with most games, but this is their mindset, right? Like, I'm notoriously bad for never finishing a game. But I still have that mindset because I think we all sort of do.
Yeah.
And then it's like, then you look at even the short games. 5 hours is 5 hours. I don't only have 5 hours. What if I get bored? Then I don't want to waste 3 of those 5 hours because I'm bored. And so, like, part of it is just, I think, wrapping your head around this is downtime, not this is a culmination of hours of a hobby.
Yeah.
As I think shifting your brain that way will help if you have the time. But also sometimes it's just the opportunity cost. Like, the reason why your brain is like, I don't know, this doesn't seem appealing, is because you only have so much downtime. And, like, maybe it's your brain's way of saying, hey, I'm really busy and got my family and I want to see them, but I work from home, and so sometimes I work till dinner or after dinner, and actually that hour now has me wanting to be, with people, etc.
Yeah, and it's.
I don't know, I'm just like I'm making some assumptions, but, like, that's the story that, like, no mental maths gets you back to gaming, because that the maths has gotten you out of gaming.
Yes, yeah, and I can completely see how easy it is to sort of fall out of the hobby, and and all hobbies essentially, especially when things are kind of vying for your time as well. As you say, you've only got a certain amount of downtime, and for me at the moment, a lot of that has been saying, well, Kim and I will sit down and say, let's watch this together, or do this, rather than me coming away and playing a game and her doing something sort of separate. So spending more time in the evenings together by sort of watching something and discussing it and those kinds of things. Or if she has something that she has wanted to watch that I'm not interested in, I've found over the last couple of weeks actually that I've come away from the screen and I've gone and done something else. So I picked up some Warhammer, so I've been painting that, and other little older hobbies which are kind of creeping back in to take away from that sort of time. And I suppose I found maybe Inscription was kind of one of those games where it was compelling and you sort of wanted to get to the end to know what the fuck is going on. Some games are telegraphed very easily. Yeah. This is the story, this is kind of the beats, this is what's going to happen. and you can kind of sit and go, yeah, okay, I see where this is going. Whereas Inscription kind of draws you in, and you don't really know how that's going to finish. And that pulled me along for a very reasonable amount of time. You know, most of my gaming sort of time at the early start of last kind of week, no, 2 weeks ago now, I suppose, for talking about it last week. But again, even with that, with something that was compelling, I got to a point where I'm like, I've got an hour, I'll sit in front of the computer, I'll do some more work this evening, rather than playing, say, in Inscription or something like that. And I imagine with this, it's very easy to fall out of it, and it's slightly harder to then retrain your mind in these different ways of thinking to get back into it. In just sort of saying, yeah, it's an hour, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether I finish this game, as long as I, sit down and I want to play something, I want some escape for a little bit, doesn't matter what it is, I'll just get into this for a little. So it's a harder way of retraining to get back into that sort of mindset than it is to just go, I just won't bother.
I mean, also, I think it's telling that you did work, which probably means that, like, those timelines are pressing on you, whether you want to admit it or not.
Yes. Yes.
But I mean, I think Lucy's got it right, where she says, don't force it, let it come naturally, like a poop. And I think that's true, like, and that's kind of what I did, right? Like, I managed to play just enough games to barely continue, well, I didn't even play games for a couple of years there, really. You can look at our year-end reviews from past years to just see how it's like, oh yeah, 10 games. Did I play 10 games? And now I'm back into it, and part of that is sort of freer time, but a lot of it was just, like a mindset shift. And like, honestly, the weekly streams were a way of tricking my brain into thinking gaming was like, I should be more productive because, tenuous career, blah blah blah, was just not letting me game. And then it was like, all right, well, now I'm being productive, and then it's like, now I'm playing games, off and on in the day. And like, some of that is me also gravitating. I used to love big epic long games, and now I'm playing a lot more, like I'm spending more time with Forza Horizon 5, because you can kind of pick it up and play for 10 minutes and then put it down. So I think that's a big part of it too. But I think, just like, I mean, I think you should finish Inscription, but also it's okay if you don't.
Yes, absolutely. And again, I suppose it's part of the not issue, but almost the pressure of us doing a weekly show as well. You want something new to be able to talk about kind of each and every week. It's sort of, to be in the conversation as well with the with the gaming community too. Sit here and say, like, have you played the newest game where you jump out of buildings into hay bales and all of these kinds of things? And you say, yes, I have, and have a conversation kind of around that. And if that's just for that week, sure, you then sort of, your brain at least thinks, what am I going to talk about next week? Can't talk about the hay bale game again. I've got to talk about something else. Talk about fishes instead. Talk about the fish game. These
which
kinds of these kinds of things, which have, I suppose, maybe not pushed me previously, but have kind of been there in my mind to think, I'll just try this. I'll just do this. And I kind of just do this. Whereas other things are sort of pressing in a little bit more now to take that sort of time away a little bit more. So suddenly the, 12 hours over a week I had free in my evenings or weekends or whatever to sort of play games and things like that are starting to, work takes a couple of hours of those away, 3, maybe 4 hours of those away. Watching TV is starting to creep into that as well. Painting Warhammer, again, that's an evening gone, that's another couple of hours, and suddenly you're down to maybe 4 hours a week to play something, and then my mind has gone, if it's only 4 hours, then what's the point? Why, I've only got 4 hours. Why start Resi 7? I think I've already made my peace with the idea of playing through Resi 7 a little bit to just tee me up for when Resi 8 sort of turns up next week. So it's kind of, yeah, just that sort of shift. And I think these conversations and talking to your friends and having these conversations helps you to sort of sit there and see things from maybe a different perspective as well. So I can come away from our conversation and be like, well, it doesn't really, who gives a shit if I put another 3 hours into Resi 7 over the next week and just never play it again? Does it matter? No.
Yeah, that's the big, like, I also stayed away from sequels because they hadn't gotten around to finishing their earlier parts. Notoriously, part of my gaming glut was also that. And now I'm First Looks actually helped me with that as well, because it was like seeing gaming as a dedicated time because I had a slot to stream in.
Yeah.
But actually, that was like, all right, it's just that. And so, like, a lot of these games I never go back to. Sometimes I do. Like this week, today, in fact, I went back to Moonglow Bay.
Nice.
And had a great time, and would probably still play after we finish if I wasn't annoyed as piss at it right now.
Is this something to touch on, or is this a wider conversation?
Well, it was going to be one of my small topics, but
well, let's get into it. Let's just go.
I really liked it. I got further. Did the first boss, yesterday, and then today I played
boss.
Yeah, boss fish.
Oh.
I got deeper in the plot, and then I got on. So I recorded a couple episodes of a different podcast that I'm guest hosting on, which is a segment by segment of Amazon Women on the Moon, the John Landis sort of sketch ensemble thing, based around the cable TV watching of a 1950s movie, basically. So like a lot of the sketches are like commercials that you're like channel flipping around. Anyway, and then I'm like, I don't know if I'm gonna get anything really done. I'll play some Moonglow Bay, because I really was enjoying it last night. And then I played and was like, I gotta stop, and it went to save, and I'm notoriously bad for overwriting saves instead of adding a new one. But it's got like some of the UI is just kind of clunky with the controller, but it's way better with the controller than not. But there's just save load screen, and hit save, and then it didn't. It said confirm ? And I was like, oh, am I supposed to go yes or no? And I tapped the the stick, and it changed color. I'm like, oh, that must be the yes. And then I clicked, because what's the harm? If it's no, I cancel out. If it's yes, it works. So no, what I had done was change it from save to load.
Oh.
And then I load it, because it wasn't it was save/load and then a list of your files, and then apparently you go to a file and you click, and it's like, do you want to save? And then you can hit your right stick or your left stick, and then I wanted to load, and so I just loaded away 2.5 hours of game on a game that has 0 autosave. And I was just like, oh, I'm back on this day. I did a lot. I a lot of plot, and the stuff I was doing wasn't just fishing, because that's fine, or fishing and cooking. It sucks because I didn't get money. There's some upgrades I bought, and that stinks because I got to the point where I could add a kitchen to my ship, and I have a bed in my ship, so I could theoretically never go home.
Yep.
I've got to that point. I've made my ship faster. I also can't remember if I checked all my lobster traps before or after that save, and they take a day or so to fill up, and blah blah blah. But I unlocked the market, which has a fisher salesperson, a recipe salesperson, and I did a whole bunch of plot stuff. That's I also unlocked because I passed the first boss. I went and did these mini challenges to get new fishing poles from the expert fishermen in the village, which involved sailing across the map to use the fishing pole 3 times, and then unlock the next person. And it was just all this stuff, which was fine, busy work for a game. I just was like, I don't want to do this. I've done it. I don't this. It's not super engaging gameplay, and I now know that I can't get to the next stuff without redoing 2 hours of gameplay, which I could probably do quicker. But it was just well, quit.
Yep.
I don't know when I'm gonna feel up to it again, to be honest, which sucks because I was getting into it, but it's exactly why I'm like, because I got so into it that it's like the prospect of going back those specific paces is like really unpalatable right now.
Yeah, I can absolutely see that as well. Yeah, talking about kind of how we spend our time when we get in that kind of thing to then have that kind of setback, and yes, you can. Yeah, you probably run through it a little bit quicker. You kind of know the beats that are coming, you know what to do, where you got to go, and those kinds of things. 2 hours is still 2 hours. You might get it cut 15 minutes off because you're not dawdling about somewhere, but you're going straight to said destination or something like that. But
Right.
you still have the rest of the game kind of in between all of those points as well. The idea of cooking some stuff up and then putting it in your vending machine and those sorts of elements too, which you still kind of need to spend time sort of doing, I suppose, along with the story beats and those kinds of things.
And so that part's fine because, like, if I didn't accidentally overwrite my save I accidentally load without saving. It's fine because, like, I'd be doing basically the same thing: fish, make some things. I wouldn't have access to my new recipes, but other than that, I could still do that, and that's kind of the core mechanic loop. So I'm actually okay with repeating those things, even at the like stuff, the boring stuff I've already done. But also, like, this is like the flip side of what we're talking about, which is you can view games as just like, am I going to be entertained for the next couple hours? I'll play it. I might not, but I know I won't because I have to redo all this shit.
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, I don't want to waste an hour. I only have an hour of gaming left in the next couple days. No. Like, I'd rather try and get first place on a dirt race in Forza because that feels like the right type of repetition. Also, turns out I'm very bad at dirt racing in Forza. But you know what I mean? Like, that's the type of repetition where it's built into the gameplay loop, and it's the fact that it's like the unlocking and the story beats around it that are just like, no.
Yeah,
because some of that was like getting
completely.
town hall notices to like get this person wants this one fish. I know kind of where to get it, but it sometimes takes us a while, so I had to kind of grind some fishing. But then I could use the fish I got that wasn't that one fish to like make a thing. But it's like, now I definitely don't want to regrind that stupid jellyfish. Like, it's those little things where it's like, again, it works okay first time round, but and like there's also it's kind of still buggy on like when you can or can't go up walk up a thing, the ledging, and some of you bump into the things a lot. So it was like kind of get glitchy, but I was okay because I was having a good time. And I was like, I don't like the prospect of redoing all that stuff and then going up that hill to talk to that person and maybe like getting stuck on a thing. And it's like, no, right now all I can think of is like the annoying parts of those 2-3 hours that I lost. And it's like, nope. Who knows? I might go back to it because I'll forget or I enjoyed it enough, right? But like, it's a testament to sort of. There's a reason they call them quality of life improvements, like autosave, and it's just like, I don't know why this doesn't have an autosave, even at the midnight, right? Like, forget I've committed.
Absolutely, yeah.
Like, because I had some quite busy days. Or even every time you go to sleep, because you can kind of abuse the sleep mechanic because it doesn't really seem to do a lot. You just get Zeds. You fall down and get up back again. But like, that would also give an incentive for the sleep to do something if it was like, and now we've autosaved. Just something, because it just felt like, and yeah, I've learned this, but also I've read online of people complaining about the lack of autosave because the bugs have crashed it. And like I'm sorry, I don't think about saving until I leave because modern games have a save state.
They just do it.
This doesn't, and because of that lack of save state, I just didn't save. Right, I loaded as if I Alt F4'd and then had to go back to that earlier save.
It's an interesting point in that with this not lack of quality of life features, but with things like that kind of aren't included on maybe not necessarily kind of niche games, but very sort of genre heavy sort of experiences, and then couple that with my idea that suddenly I've only got X amount of time to play. It's kind of no wonder that certain games have massive audiences, and that is pretty much all, say, person X will play. They'll play their FIFA, and that'll be it. Someone else will play Call of Duty, and that will kind of be it. Because they don't have the time to put into these kinds of experiences, and potentially they don't want to have experiences which are potentially progress losing and these kinds of things as well. That kind of more glitchy sort of element to things. They want a pretty finished game to just be able to play with their mates or not every year, and it might be they pick up sort of 2 or 3 games. Like I don't see myself getting to that point where I'm like, well, I'll only ever play the this game, won't be Call of Duty and FIFA and those kinds of things, but it might be like, right, Resi 8's come out, I'll just play that for until I've sort of finished it, or this is coming out, I will just play this 3 games a year type of thing. I can't see myself getting to that point, but I could see myself with that lack of time absolutely getting to a point where we have a chat and you say, I've been playing this, and I go, sounds like a game I'd enjoy, but at the moment I can't put the time into experiencing that. And I think as we kind of, everyone ages, but as gamers, as a demographic kind of gets older, and I can't remember what it is, but like the average age of a gamer is early 30s or something like that, isn't it? Definitely, no, yeah, definitely something somewhere in your 30s is kind of the average age of sort of gamers. That we have these kinds of experiences. We're very much in this kind of bubble as well, where we sort of surround ourselves with gaming news, and kind of on Twitter with the sort of the personalities and people that are very much in the industry and stuff, where we hear about all of these new games. We know when stuff is coming out. We are not sort of average kind of consumer who does have only 8 hours a week. They just want to play Call of Duty and let off some steam.
Yeah.
And that's kind of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's also why, like, the prospect of an MMO appeals to people, some adults, right? Is because it's like, my game. I have this game. I pay this fee. It's done. Oh, look, a new expansion. Cool. I don't have a think, but also I can get quite good at it. I can get like some of the rush of both familiarity and like skill development, but like I can also take a break and come back, and the quests will still be there or whatever. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's 38 now, playing games more again. Like, I don't think I'm ever gonna not be a gamer.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, a person who plays games on the regs. But like, I'm currently not in a family of my own, and so that will change things as it's hit you. But again, you've also found with your journey with E some points where when she was really young, you could game more.
Yes.
And when you had hit a moment where you could play more and play a bit with her in the past like year or so, and so it's interesting that way, how like it isn't I'm old now, I can't find the time, because you could share your hobby with your kids and blah blah blah. But yeah, at the same time, it's going to be different, I think. And
yes, you're not necessarily playing the kinds of games that you would have done a year or 2 years previously. You're going to be playing, things that would appeal to the family rather than just, say, yourself, to get that time in with gaming, but also kind of bringing the family in as well. And I might have bought a little secret Christmas present for the family that I think they'll probably enjoy, which is gaming related, which I'll talk about after Christmas, just in case anyone's at the door listening. They're probably not, but just in case. Or they, listen to this. I don't think Evelyn's up on her podcasts, so it's not too much of a bother. But it's definitely one again where my not sort of thought is shifting on how to experience this more. It's maybe more, they'll enjoy this. Let's bring them in a little bit more, and kind of we can do this, and then that's my evening one, week. That's my gaming time. Doing it with them instead of with The Witcher 4 or something like that. That's it, Lucy. I bought them Cyberpunk 2077 because I thought now the reviews are sort of pretty good that they'd enjoy that. Like Lucy says, the Homer's bowling ball. I do keep telling everyone though that Evelyn wants a PlayStation 5 for Christmas. And no one's even said, yeah, sure, we'll get that for her. Don't worry about it. No one. How dare they?
Yeah, I mean, she's a big Ratchet and Clank fan, isn't she?
She'll love it. She just wants to play Returnal. That's it.
Returnal. Nice.
Yeah. I think that's a good point for me to stop ranting about whether I've got the time or not to actually play games. So we'll talk about some more games, maybe after a short beer break. You ready for a beer?
Yeah.
Nice. I'm staying in Bristol for my beers this week, and I've got another Arbor beer. I think they've featured quite a lot over the past few weeks because it's not just they are great, but they're bringing out more and more kind of new beers. I don't know whether their sort of model has shifted very slightly, that they're suddenly in a place where they can go, hey, let's bring out a new beer, and they've got weekly, fortnightly sort of new releases. But I've been seeing a lot more kind of one-offs and new releases from them over the last few months. But this is James and the Giant Nectaron, a double IPA. It's a very yellow and orange kind of can. You can't even see it because it reflects off of that light so much. Tiny bit of flavour text. It's 8.5%. It suggests, as some of their bigger beers do, because it's a pint, it's a sharing can. I'm not sharing, I'm just going to drink it. It's a double IPA created by our very own brewer, James, and brewed with Nectaron hops, a new variety from New Zealand. James and the Giant Nectaron makes sense. I mean, Lucy, it does sound peachy. We'll see what it's like when I've cracked it open. And we'll come to you, Aadil, for beer number 2.
Yeah. So this beer I'm having is the Third Barrel Let Them Eat Cake Coconut Brownie Milk Stout.
Ooh.
From Third Barrel, obviously. Yeah, Third Barrel's in Dublin, Irish brewery.
Yep.
A rich and decadent milk stout flavored with lavish cocoa beans and cut with a hint of toasted coconut. Think of your favorite dessert, except in beer form. And it's a 330ml can, 6%. Got this lovely, almost, it's a hop in the middle of a fingerprint or something.
With like a sky kind of land, a very lovely,
like sunsetty,
pictured sunsetty landscape picture behind it. Yeah.
Yeah, very odd. Anyway.
Sometimes these beer labels are just, that slightly odd. I can pour mine as well whilst we're here. It's flowing very, very quickly. Again, I don't know whether I've just hit very similarly with the 2 beers that I've got just through coincidence, or it's just what people are currently brewing at the moment. But again, this Arbor very, very kind of transparent, a little bit of haze to it, but you can see my my thumb through the glass. And again, a nice frothy white head on there, very similar kind of colour to the previous bit, maybe just a touch more amber. I think the Newtown Park was maybe a little bit more straw in colour. This is maybe a little bit more bronzy, a little bit more amber, perhaps. not much on the nose. When unlike the Newtown Park, when I cracked the can, I didn't really get much from that on the nose. And here, not getting a huge amount. There's a little sweetness to it, a touch of sweetness, and something maybe, I don't know. It makes me think of kind of like sticky kind of sweets almost. Not say like kind of caramelly. It's not quite that kind of sort of sweetness, but it's very similar. Okay. Flavor-wise, it's, I mean, it is very sort of nectarine-y. It's got that touch of sort of stone fruit, soft peachiness, but also that then slightly acidic sweetness you get from sort of oranges. You know, it's kind of trying to find a balance, I think, there between a slightly sweeter sort of flavour and then something which is a bit bigger, which is not necessarily a little bit more bitter, but is maybe more balanced out with the malts in its sort of softness, in how that's kind of trying to come across. It does taste like, you know, being unable to describe the nose and now being unable to describe the flavour. They are very similar, so there is some parity between sort of the two, but you're definitely getting kind of this, sweet, and then very light sort of stone fruit sort of flavour to it, which has a lovely, I would say, sort of caramel and biscuit sort of malty backbone there as well. Just sitting behind enough that it kind of balances out that sweetness just a touch. It's nice, but again, that nose, the more I drink it, the more the nose kind of doesn't change, but sort of unfolds a little bit more. And they're definitely getting that kind of incredibly ripe, almost starting to sort of, you know, when you have an orange and it's started to shrivel very slightly. It's almost on that kind of end of things. Yes. So yeah, it does edge on that, like, very, very ripe orange. You know, it's starting to dry out in that kind of sense. And that peachiness, like, I haven't had a nectarine. I'm obviously the thing. James and the Giant Peach is the title of the Roald Dahl book, and they've gone with Nectaron because of the hops. But I haven't had a nectarine for fucking ages.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I'm sort of I'm sat here thinking, is it somewhere in the middle of an orange and a peach? It seems like it probably should be. It's a lovely, juicy sort of stone fruit. That's all I have in my memory of a nectarine. But yeah, you're getting this nice softness of sort of stone fruits, but also this lovely, kind of a very drying orange flavour in there as well. Yeah, I mean, 8.5% is sort of boozy, and I think there's a little bit of that in there as well, maybe. Just a little bit kind of towards the end is getting, not nail varnish remover, but it's starting to, you know, the more I drink, the more it's just starting to get to that kind of, the booze is kicking through a little bit more, impacting those kind of initial sort of flavours just that little bit more as it sits. So we'll see how this is sort of towards the end, and come back to you for the third barrel.
Third barrel, second beer. Another almost no head. Oh wow. Ah, that's a nose. Sweet. It's definitely coconut, but not desiccated coconut. It smells a little more robust than that. I'm getting some chocolate, almost like chocolate icing.
Okay.
I think it's the sweetness that the coconuts help bringing out. That's just making the chocolate come off as more, yeah, like I said, more icing, more sweet chocolate than just raw chocolate. I'm used to chocolate on the like maltier coffee side, chocolate cocoa side, and this is very much the sweet dessert um side. Yeah, that coconut's really nice. 6%, I think I said. Ooh. Yeah, so it's got water, barley, oats, wheat, lactose explains sweetness, cocoa nibs, hops, natural chocolate, and coconut extract. So I was wrong. It's an extract at least, and yeast. But it's got this lovely. You get that sweetness, a bit of zip that reminds me of cola a bit.
Okay.
On the initial taste. And then the sweetness comes sorry, the full robust sort of chocolatey taste fades a bit. Sweetness remains sort of sitting on top, and you get you're getting the cocoa nibs giving a bit more coffee to it. But I think that's also because it's got this lovely lightly burnt, I think toasted coconut. It said something in the flavor, but like this toasted character,
Yeah.
which is helping giving the chocolate and malted coffee notes a little more like coffee, like roasted coffee. It's also bringing that sweetness to the fore, because it's quite light, but it's helping sort of juxtapose. And it's just it finishes quite wet.
Yep.
So, except wanting to have that, like I said, kind of cola-esque start, and then that middle of that the middle is probably my favorite part because it's again you get that coconut's there, and it's just yeah, and the lactose is starting to fade, and you're just getting the more robust chocolatey and roasted notes that are giving the hint of coffee at the same time before it kind of all fades off, and you're just left with this not quite sickly sweet, but this sort of sweet light finish. It's really quite tasty. I'm looking at the can because I want to confirm in the notes. Hint of toasted coconut, whether that's just what it tastes like or whether they actually had toast, because they said coconut extract. But yeah, it definitely that toasted is. I would say I don't taste it sort of attached to the coconut so much as rounding out the malts.
Okay.
But yes, this third barrel let them eat cake, coconut brownie milk stout. Yeah, I get that. I just think there's a little more coffee because of that coming through. But like I said, that's like chocolatiness to the point of icing. I think that's why they would call it like a brownie cake type thing, because it's like it's quite desserty as chocolate versus like sometimes you get these chocolatey notes that are much more close to like really high end chocolate that has like fruity berry coffee notes but still is like chocolate. This is the opposite. This is like the note is chocolate because it's like that lactose especially. It's just bringing it very dessert forward. I was expecting because it had brownie and cake in the title. I was expecting something a little thicker, and I actually kind of like that it's actually thin on the mouth, so that you can come back as much like more easily without feeling like like it's not coating your mouth and just sticking and staying. Which at 6% could go either way.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that toasted, like lightly burnt taste is really something I haven't had that nuance before. Usually, it's a little you get more burnt or not, and I think toasted is a good term for that because it's just like, oh yeah, just like ever so light hint of like acrid burnt, but not really. Yeah, it's very good.
Nice, good. We'll enjoy these 2 new beers. For those people who have just joined us, hello. Aadil, you're drinking Third Barrel Let Them Eat Cake. I think that was what it was called. Yeah, and I'm drinking
Let Them Eat
Arbor.
Cake Coconut Brownie Milk Stout.
Nice, and I'm drinking the Arbor James and the Giant Nectaron Double IPA. We're going to drink these. We're going to talk about some games a little bit more. What other talking points did you have this week? I want to hit on sort of Moonglow Bay and my lack of talking points in not having played kind of very much. There's lots of other stuff I can whinge about and moan about, if necessary. But what else did you want to chat about this week?
I played on the beer front. I played Brewmaster.
Oh, yes.
Which is by our friends Auroch Digital, also Bristolian. It was their limited alpha on the weekend through Monday, and Monday night I got some time to hang in, jump on. It was simple, and there's some weird bugs, but overall it was quite enjoyable. Basically, they gave you you hit F1 and you get a recipe with a whole bunch of tooltips built in to make their pale ale, and then you follow the steps, and like there's a fridge for ingredients, there's a dry ingredients closet and an equipment closet, and you go through all the steps to make the beer. But what makes it unique, I guess, is things like, you want to pour a bunch of water into a mash tun, and you like literally click R for pour. Is it like the UI is not all there, because a lot of times you're like, right, you have to click it, put it down, then hover over it to then get the tip to press V to take the lid off, and then that goes away. And while you fiddle with it, you just don't have the option to get the lid back on. But if you leave, come back, pick it up, put it down, then you can probably get the like little things like that. But it's an alpha, so that happens. But what's nice is it's like scroll wheel based, at least for the PC, which is all we had. So you scroll up, and that affects how like the degree in which you are pouring.
Okay.
So like your mouse wheel is pouring angle, which means you can kind of go flick it one click, and it'll go until that click's done and not done, which is a very cool way of trying to get precision while reflecting that, like, hey, you don't, especially when you're at the early stages, you don't have like high precision instruments. It's like 20 liters. I can't. Like I tried to be precise, and it's like, this isn't gonna work. But also, you can like throw the wheel forward and like pour hard, and then throw it back to like dump a bunch, then check, and then do a nuance pour after that. Obviously, there's a lot of like place one barrel above the other one, and then and tube them together, and then open the tubes, and then wait for it to slowly drain 20 liters. So it's got a really smart, you hit T and get a stopwatch, and then your scroll wheel will go up to 500 times the speed of time, which, boy, you can abuse, but also miss the mark because you're not paying attention. So I kind of naffed the recipe in a couple of ways, and one of them was just like overcooking a thing, or just because I was like, I can fast forward time. I don't want to, but I'll fast forward at 100 times instead of 10 times, because why not, right? Like too much quality of life. Yeah, it was, but like you had to do the precision, and like I've never made beer before. I obviously know the steps, but I've never like gone through each one. And like there was stuff like keeping a constant temperature and then adding boiling water to maintain it, which I understand the idea, but that was like a thing you had to monitor, and that changed how much you could afford to fast forward time, right? A few things you could probably do at the same time if you knew what you're doing, but obviously it was slowly going through. Definitely got burnt by the read the next couple steps philosophy of recipe that I didn't do and haven't done before in cooking, and it's bit me in the ass. But like, yeah, just like it's like, oh yeah, get these 2 citras, get these 2 hops, put them in, cook for 15 minutes, and the next step's like, After 15 minutes, put the other one in. I'm like, oh, but I'm at 40 minutes and they've both been in there. Oops. And like I basically, the flavoring hop can only be there in there for like 10 minutes of the boil, of the hour of the boil. And I put it in for the first 40 and then the last 10 because I was like, take it out quick. Oh, I guess I put it back in. And sure enough, what was nice is like the engine they use for all this was pretty good because they, the warning was like if you overcook the flavoring hops, they'll just break down. And my pale ale was like super malty and almost not hoppy at all. In the end, because basically you finished the drink and you do a tasting and it gives you like a breakdown. And sure enough, like I had none of the notes you would expect from the flavoring
just
hop.
Boiled all of the hops out completely.
I just killed it. Yeah, and I was like, cool. That's what I would have expected if you had asked me, what if someone did this? Right, and this is what they told me would happen, and that made sense. And it was still a beer; it just wasn't really the beer to their recipe. Some little things like their tube physics is batshit. They're constant clipping through things, like, but also it's really hard to make a flexible thing because you're connecting point A and B, but the game is letting you have them fairly far apart, which I think is smart.
Yep.
But that means the path the game picks to draw the tube to then let the liquid flow through is often through cupboards or floors or something. Again, it's an alpha, but it's just like, whoa.
Yeah, I did. On that point, I remember when The Last of Us 2 came out last year, and I can't remember whether it was in a podcast or how I came about this anecdote, but at one point in The Last of Us Part 2, you have to pick up a rope and not a rope, an electrical cable, like a big external electrical cable. You pick it up and you can plug one end is plugged into a generator, and you have to get it plugged into, or it's plugged into what you need it to be, and you have to plug it into the generator. Anyway,
right.
But Ellie can throw it, and she throws it over a fence. You run around, you grab the other side, you take it up where you need to, and it kind of acts as you would expect a cable to sort of act. It isn't just pong pong. It kind of runs and then goes over and then stretches where it would stretch, and those kinds of where it would be tense and things like that. And I seem to remember something I read or something I heard said that was one of the hardest things for them to get right, for them to implement, was the physics of cables and ropes and these kinds of things. So it's definitely something I think that, yes, again, it's an alpha, but it's something that maybe the technology is out there. But are we talking like really high-end technology to get the physics of that kind of item just right versus it just working? It just working as we need it to work.
Yeah, I mean, and this is the thing is, like, you need to use gravity, right? Like, to drain from one thing to the other, and you can see the level go down along with numbers. You hover over a thing, it'll tell you how full it is, so you can see the number dropping, right? Mm-hmm. Stuff like that, you're like, oh, okay, so this is clearly physics going through the thing. It's just I haven't figured out how to... probably because they built the kitchen and stuff the way you kind of standardly do, which is just like a hitbox wall. It's just an image, and then you just have some invisible walls. But that means if something accidentally starts behind it, it can easily come back out. Which is, I think, what the tube was doing. That tube was basically, the tube path is spawning weird, but that kind of makes sense. But yeah, it's fine. It's not like they're clearly looking for the basic mechanics, which again, I think the fact that I boiled off the hops and then got a non-hoppy beer was interesting, and like I want to know, because you're starting very homebrewy, and I'm really curious. This made me curious about, like, do you upgrade all your gear? How many beers can you have on the go? How many recipes are they looking for? Is there going to be ideally there'd be like some sort of beer manual that would like help you figure out how to make your own twists and whatever. And I think that's where the longevity would have to be, is some sort of external evaluation, which is going to be really strange, of your like creations, such that you could win beer awards or something along those lines. There's this like there's the tasting room, the kitchen, and then this like room with shelves and empty picture frames and like a fire and some chairs, and like, is this the hangout room? I don't know, but it exists. Super curious what that does. But like, I think if that's even just a place to show your accolades, that would be interesting.
Yeah. Did you?
But
Was there any kind of sort of rating when you went and tasted your beer? Did it just come up and say, "This is what it is like"? You have made this recipe within 20% of it, sort of thing.
no, and I kind of like that it's being a little more like, hey, you made this beer, not like you're trying to make this specific thing and you failed.
Yep.
Gamification. Like, I like that because it gave me these stats and it didn't tell me, hey, you were pretty. So the thing is, what I like is it gave you a recipe, but it didn't say you at no point or did you say I'm making this recipe, and I think that's on purpose. So the beer I made just had 4 pages of notes of like different hoppiness and alcohol and blah 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 blah. Like, I can't remember all of the different pages, but like a whole bunch of information. And I think I'd rather it stay that way than trying to like play to the curve of the game, because I think it speaks to the like, hey, you're just trying to make a beer and like learn how to make something have more of these notes or that notes. And even though obviously it's going to be a simplified version of reality in that sense, I think it's more interesting to me if it's not just a puzzle game, right?
Yeah.
Of like, get your 100% pale ale, because actually you could just like, oh yeah, actually I put the Citra in for 20 minutes instead of 10, and it's like slightly malty, but this like these notes seem super interesting, and it's like a twist on, or like, I over poured the Citra and then I found out that it's hoppier than the standard Aura Digital's pale ale recipe, and that seems like the tasting notes seem more interesting. Next time I'm going to do that on purpose. Like, that's the kind of stuff I'd like to see, like in a notebook, a brewer's notebook or something in the game. But
Yeah.
I mean, obviously I have no idea what they're aiming for, but this made me more curious. And like I said, I immediately, like, it's just a 40 minutes ish, including fast forwarding time, for 2 15-day periods or whatever, to do a beer. But obviously, depending on how you time things with multiple recipes, you could probably offset and have beers constantly maturing, which I assume is going to be where some of the like level design might be, or like progression.
Yeah, and I suppose it's from the conversation we had with Peter and Andres, it was a not necessarily just kind of like a home brewing sim, but I don't think we're at least getting to a level where you are upgrading your kit to kind of like microbrew, not necessarily microbrew, but you're getting further and further in. But to know and have some kind of sense that, right, I've got this kit set up here and this is brewing this. Okay, now I've got this one over here and this is brewing this, and maybe potentially I can have something like slow fermenting, like a Pilsner or something like that over here, which I've brewed and it's just kind of like sat there. It'd be interesting to see how intricate, how many processes can be going on through a certain amount of time, game time sort of thing, for you to not just necessarily, or for people to kind of sit there and be like, how do you brew beer? Blah, 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 follow the steps. How do I brew this beer? Do it in this kind of way. How does that work? But to then, have some kind of challenge to it and be like, right, I've got one on the go. Let's get another one going. Okay, cool. Now I need to balance doing both of those sort of things. Did you dabble in any of that, or was it very set in the alpha in being like,
the alpha
just
base
do this?
gave you, the alpha gave one recipe, so I could have started it again in the 50, because you have 2 moments where you have to wait days at a time, right? So I could have set up another one, but I was just, in that case, I was just like, let's see what the whole circuit is, and not. But I think if it was like not a weekend only alpha, like if it was like a alpha tester or whatever, I would probably try and do more of that stuff and play a lot more of with, hey, what ingredients do I have? What does this do? Treat it like a sandbox, because essentially they gave you a sandbox with a cheat sheet saying you want to do this, but you don't have to. Things that I tried to do, because it's me. You know, the best part is
did you break it?
I didn't break it. I tried to set a fire, didn't work. Okay. So you can leave the hob on perpetually. So obviously I did. If you put an empty pot on there, it's fine.
Oh. Okay.
I don't think they have much of a boil off mechanic, but I filled a pack of sugar in the bottom of a pot, put the pot on the hob, and it wouldn't even give me a temperature.
Oh.
Until I added 500 milliliters of water, and then it immediately was like, "Oh, I'm getting very hot." It's like, aha, I see what your threshold is, and I was like, I was streaming, so I wasn't gonna keep like pushing. Like, okay, so where is this? But I think obviously it's an alpha. They're not, but also like I wouldn't be surprised if that type of thing stays in the game. Of like, they've got good physics for boiling and rolling boil and whatever, blah blah blah. They don't need to have physics for what happens if you try and heat dry ingredients, or not enough wet ingredients, or like, can you boil? What happens if I put a pot to boil and then fast forward time till infinity?
Yes,
right.
I just put all of the glass implements I have inside of it and see what happens.
Yeah.
A
couple things I visually that were like, some of the reused assets were kind of funny, but like the weirdest thing is they put skylights. And the skylights are just stretched windows with still the green like blinds on them, but they've taken the like, you know, the metal ball, you know, blinds that have that balls of metal on a string essentially, and that's how they like turn a little gear, and that's how you raise and lower the blinds. So they just removed that part of the asset, probably because it wouldn't hang with gravity properly. But it was just, I just stared at it for a while and be like, so how would I close those blinds? But what was kind of frustrating, and I hope they do something with this, is there's a day-night cycle light box, skybox. That's the word. But I like go when I fast forward time, and they've put the calendar facing the wall, and then time passes, and then I can see it getting lighter and darker behind me. But I'm just staring at some hops on like some tiling.
The tiles,
like, yeah. And it's like, could you? But like you've made a skybox, and you've made a night cycle. If I could show it off, like put the calendar on the wall or something, such that or let me look around, because like it isn't a skip 15 days, we're done. It's you're going really fast, and it shows you the progression of time, presumably, so you can pause it or stop it. Or I don't even know if you can escape. But maybe that's what they're thinking.
Like the idea that you have, you know, multiple tasks to do. This will at some point allow you to kind of be more creative and get more beers kind of brewing. So you can be like, right, yes, this one needs to sit there for the next 15 days, but actually this one that I'm doing over here needs kind of like me to do something in 12 hours time. So okay, right, jump forward 12 hours, and you know, rather than kind of saying, right, let's jump forward 15 days and then going stop 12 hours, hit, you know, that kind of thing. It'd be interesting if that is a little bit more kind of like fluid. But I see what you're saying absolutely in terms of like, you've got all of this, you know,
put the work in.
Rising, you've put the work in of the sun kind of going up and down. Have that view or something to...
Well, I guess, yeah, and it's an alpha, but it just sort of speaks to, they're clearly like just trying to get the base stuff working. But like, you don't want a game which forces you to watch time pass even very quickly, giving you no camera control, and you're literally staring at a wall. But then having, and at that point you might as well just like jump to 15 days from now. Yes, right? Like there's no point in doing the passage of time. But having the day-night cycle clearly affect my lighting was almost more frustrating because it was just like, oh yeah, time's passing. Would be nice if I could look at something.
Mm-hmm.
And then like I timed it such that I was like, oh, it's nighttime. Look up through those skylights. I'm like, oh, there was a nice looking skybox. Huh. Well, that would have been useful. And then I found another calendar in the sitting room, and I'm like, oh, maybe the sitting room is a prettier room. Maybe no, it faces the wall and the fireplace. I was like, ah, okay. But like, obviously, I'm nitpicking, but I do think it's important to like talk about like, hey, these are the limitations of the alpha, but also like, this would be a thing that would not be happy with in a finished game, and like that's like a thing that they have to work on. But overall, I wish the alpha and maybe the next one had 2 or 3 recipes, just so I could feel how that went with 2 or 3 things on the go, and like seeing the difference in both the recipes, one, right, but also the tasting. Like I have there's 4 pages of feedback on like doing the tasting room, and it's like, this is more malty than hoppy, little spectrum, and there's all these charts and stuff, and it would just be nice to get a better feel for like the range of the game, kind of. And although now I think about it, you can't really do multiple things at the same time. Well, you can only heat one thing at a time because you only have a 1 heating hob at this point in the game.
Right.
But I assume that's also because of alpha. Like,
yeah, and again, you then move up, say to the next location, or a bigger sort of kitchen or something like that. That suddenly you have a range in front of you, and you have more ability to, more equipment to be able to cook more things on and stuff. So I can see how that progression would kind of work as well, through moving through different kind of locations and those sorts of things as well, for some kind of progression.
Yeah, so mostly it just got me curious about what it'll look like, and honestly, I like, part of me really digs the idea that it's mostly a sandbox with like manual full of recipes and like a notebook you can like manually add things to. Yeah, because that would be very interesting if you had to like track everything kind of like analogly.
It would be interesting to know when this build was finished, because I passed the email and the code on to you, but it was something that they'd sent out, saying this is when this is going to happen, weeks and weeks and weeks ago. And it'd be interesting to know if that was done, that this is, say, like a 3 or 4 week old build, and so much has happened kind of already since then. But essentially the alpha is to say, we just need to put our physics engine out there for everyone to dabble in and see what problems we get from this, without having all of these little extra sort of features and things like that. So, and quite often, I know when we have like betas and things for games, they're already a month old by the time, the game is a month old by the time that we get to actually play it. So it'd be interesting to see the progression from Orok as well on, is there another alpha? Are we going into beta at some point next year for a little bit sort of more testing and things, and where the game is, say, now versus whenever that build was for the alpha. So it's kind of, I like the idea that they're like, here, try and break our things, please. And you've gone into it and you're like, yeah, I did try, and I tried to break it in this way and it didn't break. But because that hasn't been programmed in.
yeah. It didn't do the thing that the world would do. I don't know if that's good or bad, because it's probably fine that you can't try and set a pot on fire or burn it out or whatever. I mean, there's definitely things you can do with tubes and things, and you've got one water source, and like I'm curious if you just started to make a Rube Goldberg machine, what it would all do. I didn't have enough time with it to do that, but like that's also would be fun if the engine permitted things that like people shouldn't do, but you could, right? Like,
completely. And this isn't a game where I think they're looking for realistic brewing physics. So how water boils, what happens when you add things to that, and how that then changes. this isn't a game where they're looking at realistic fire physics, for example, and accidentally creating a fire and it burning down the building that you're in and it being game over. That this isn't the kind of game they're going for. So I can see where then those, as you've sort of tried to play with a little bit, where those limitations may be brought in, where they may set those and say, yes, this would happen in the real world, but that isn't what we're doing. So you just cannot do that within the game space. It is just this. This is what it is, and this is what we are trying to implement and improve on and get absolutely nailed for the final release, rather than, yeah, you can just burn the building down.
Yeah.
Is there anything kind of that you also picked up on with your time that you'd maybe not necessarily improve? And we talked upon the sort of the passage of time, seeing a visualization maybe of that kind of thing. But was there anything in the sort of the kind of the processes itself? Having, say, that pressing what was it you said, F1, it bringing up that kind of recipe. From what I saw of your stream, and again with it being an alpha, everything felt a little bit dry, perhaps. To pardon the term, but it was all very kind of, here is a list of things, here is how you do stuff. Cool. Yeah. Now kind of have at it. If you want to come back, here is list of things again to come back to.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind like an active step, like kind of like the active quest things you have in action games and RPGs. But the other thing is, yeah, I mean, so like things like you go into one of the 3 storage places and you like click on a thing and that doesn't pick it up, but double clicking on the thing makes a small noise and it puts it in your hand. But if you triple click, you get one in your toolbar and one in your hand.
Oh. Okay.
And it's like a small sound cue that's hard to track, but also little things like I've got things in my toolbar. And then I like pick up a pot and I put it down, and then my toolbar is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever is my highest arity like number thing. I'm now holding out in front of me, and I have to re-stow away because I've put something down. So it's like, oh, you put something down, we'll take the next thing out. It's like, no, I didn't. Leave it alone. Let me choose one. But like little things like that, which I suspect is just because it was quickly coded. Because like I don't think it's nowhere near polished interaction UI. But things like I actually kind of wish there's a recycling bin, but like also I can just put my empty packages in my storage container and they just disappear. It's not like it doesn't tell me now, oh, you have. And maybe it's because like I don't have limited. It seemed like you had unlimited stock of everything, and that might just be because of the alpha. But like, there was no way to clean things, and it's like I could take the tubes I used in step 4, put them back with all the clean tubes, and then grab a tube and it'll be clean and use it. Or I could stow it away in my hotbar / backpack and then reuse it. And I don't think it matters at this stage of the game that it was used for the mash, and now I'm like using it for the wart or whatever. Like I think if you're gonna do all the physics, blah blah blah, I think there should be an annoying clean the shit stage of the recipe, right? Like, or throw it in a corner, but like you can't reuse it. Like I know some sort of acknowledgement that you're not in this magical fairyland where things clean themselves and you have unlimited stuff. And I don't know whether the cleaning will go in. I suspect stocks might, but maybe not. Maybe they just want you to make beer and not worry about the fact that you only have 70 kilos of sugar or whatever. And then when you're out, you have to go buy some more because that's a whole other extra gameplay loop. But it does. Yeah, I don't know. It feels like I'm a home brewer who has just like, oh no, she's like, oh, I overdid the Citra. Fuck it, I'll just put more in from my fridge and like.
Yeah, and the idea that it's kind of they're looking at an experience that is kind of mimicking home brewing in some sort of way. It's not a puzzle game. in that you have ingredient X, ingredient Y, ingredient Z, and these quantities of them, and you have to get a 5-star rating on said thing, so you have to use X. It isn't kind of that experience. So I could very much see it being a sense of, no, it's just unlimited. If you want it, it's there for you. You're looking at doing this, so these are the things that are available for you in an unlimited quantity to just be able to explore and experiment with as much as you kind of want to, essentially. Or if you're trying to get it, perfect on the recipe, then it doesn't matter whether you have an unlimited amount of things or if you have the exact quantity of kind of things. You're almost setting your own goals, with the final kind of output from what you've produced.
Yeah, and so along those lines, actually, of like getting it perfect, that's the one thing where I liked the scroll wheel thing, but obviously we know not all scroll wheels are created equal, and like mine, I found it was like, you've got it at the apex, nothing is pouring, let go of the mouse, and then just click the mouse wheel once forward, and then it like, oh, I need to put 5 more grams or milliliters or whatever in, and then I click forward, and it's like a new torrent of stuff. It's like, oh shit, no. And so it's like, oh wait, am I supposed to back off and like pump fake to get just 5 milliliters? It's like, so that part I think could use some finesse in the programming, just to get the right like numbers or whatever. But like I said, I do like that. It kind of, especially because you're using sort of very imprecise gear, but the game is giving you very precise feedback, which maybe is a bad thing. Like, oh no, it was 20 liters and 20,043. Like, sure, it doesn't matter, but like the game, because it gives you all those significant digits, you think, ah, shit, I messed up. But you probably didn't. Yep. I'm guessing the game doesn't care. Beer doesn't care at that level of precision and that type of kit, really. So things like that, where it's just like, maybe purposely obfuscate some of the precision that the game has to what the user learns. You have like an X-ray mode, which basically allows you to just like read stats off of things like gravity and temperature and stuff, which is a nice way of being like, here are the stats. You need to hover over them and it's like basically like an info window. I think there might be a better way of doing that, maybe not, or at least like, I kind of would rather like put a thermometer in, and then that gives you access to that. Like, it's just more making it feel a little more tactile than like magic information. But yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to future builds. Hopefully we'll be able to take a look at them. It's a super interesting game, and like I said, there's a lot of different ways it could go, and obviously this alpha was kind of made to like show people how to make a beer in the engine.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like, that's very integral, but not a game in and of itself. So I'm curious as to what the game wrapped around that mechanic will be.
Nice, good. I think that's probably a good place for us to finish this week. Maybe a final anecdote that kind of came to mind as we were talking about things that were sort of unfinished. Months, maybe weeks, maybe months ago, I kind of mentioned that I was running through the Halo Master Chief Collection.
Yes.
And putting my thoughts down on each of the games to put together some articles, or an article on my thoughts on all of the games before the new Halo released, which is coming out in not very long. Next week, the 8th or the 9th, potentially, I believe. That article is not going to go up.
Fair.
And I've got a lot of work, of course, but I did try and prioritise the Halo games a couple of weeks ago. And it's something I don't think I've mentioned on the podcast. I may have talked about Halo Reach and the technical issue I had with that. But with Halo Reach, the Master Chief Collection updated itself. And suddenly, when I went back into Halo Reach, it came up saying I had like 5 or 6 different options that I could go and do, whereas previously 3 of them I've already done, and 2 of them I still have to do. But it came up saying I could go and do all of them, and they all appeared on the map for me to go and do. I'm like, I've got no idea which ones I've done. It's a semi kind of open hub area where you're like, I'm this character, go and experience missions from all of these different characters. And it kind of broke. And that was my time with it. You know, I'm not running through all of this again. I haven't got the time to do that. I'm not going to. Cool. And very much wrote down in my notes, game broke, stopped playing. I then started Halo 4. I tried to play through all of the games in kind of in order sort of thing. And I went to Halo 4, and I don't know how far through I am. I think I'm about on the 5th or 6th level of 11 or 12, about halfway roughly. And I get to a level where Master Chief finds and then kind of runs around this big vehicle, a giant truck, like giant big truck, and there's like 3 levels to it. I can run around all of these levels and stuff. Anyway, it's got guns on the side. I manned one of the guns. I shot down a load of the Covenant. I jumped off of it to go and do some stuff, and
Nice.
then used this kind of pressed up on the pad to bring out this kind of targeting gun, in which then this big vehicle used its ginormous gun to explode things. And I got a certain way through this kind of level, and suddenly I'm on the vehicle. I turn around a corner, and the rest of the map just isn't there.
Oh, convenient.
It's
You
just
won.
gone. Just gone.
You beat the Halo.
And I thought, okay, this is odd. I'll stay on the manned gun I'm on, because obviously when you're on a vehicle, get on a gun just in case, right? Of course. So I'm on the gun. We go around, and I'm like, oh, okay. Well, the vehicle's still moving. It's not on anything.
It's on a path, though.
It's on its path, and it's just now moving through air. And I thought, this is weird. Come off the gun. Oh, good. Master Chief is now stuck in that position, and the vehicle is now just moving off. Brilliant.
Why would you
Perfect.
do that?
Of course. And so I thought, well, I need to do something. I'll restart the level. Played the whole level through.
Same thing.
Same thing.
Class.
So I put Halo 4 down, and I will probably never return to Halo 4.
I mean,
and see that through. Coming back to all of our conversations this evening, broken things.
That's a nice circle back to
stuff that
of
we
time.
will never play again. And I really, really hope that this article will never see the light of day now. Probably, but it might. I might talk about all of the other games and then say Halo 4 broken shit. That it kind of has me thinking, especially with the way that we've seen Halo 5 as it was presented, say, last year, and how bad the game kind of looked and those sort of things, versus now, say, the multiplayer, which is getting absolute praise, and everyone is kind of really enjoying not necessarily the battle passes and the progression and some of the cosmetic issues in that, but general gameplay seems pretty solid. I'm sort of sat thinking, right, Halo 5, or not Halo 5, Halo Infinite, when it comes out, is it a game that, again, in a week or so's time, that I'm going to find the time for? I'm like, right, yeah, I've got 10 hours this week to be able to play games over various evenings or at the weekend or something. Do I find the time for Halo Infinite? Or do I kind of sit and wait a couple of weeks, wait for people to give their thoughts, wait for loads of people to go, oh, it's bugged, or no, it's been a flawless kind of experience sort of thing. It's kind of almost that constant battle of being like, I need to experience this thing as soon as this thing is ready. Versus,
but I don't want to experience it as soon as it's ready, because it's not actually going to be ready.
Yes, exactly. How ready is Halo Infinite going to be? And that's kind of like my final thought for the episode. And it's great that Brewmaster has done this alpha for people to experience that, for them to get feedback, to understand that their engine kind of works, but also to sort of see how people react to that kind of thing. How are they going to progress as well with the development and allowing people to come in and test and break or not their game, and at what point they get to where they're just like, yep, this has got to go out. And at what point did Microsoft say to 343, it's got to go, you got to get this out now, this is the date. I think they've had quite a reasonable amount of leeway on that versus when it was meant to be released last year potentially, when the console kind of launched. So we'll see what it's like a year kind of later. But again, for listeners, for viewers, we are coming close to the end of the year. We're going to be doing our end of year roundup in the next couple of weeks, and that will then release on the last week of the year, as it kind of has traditionally done every year that we've been running. So I think Halo Infinite might and probably will not feature, because it's releasing so late. So late in the year that we just won't have the time with it to even to throw it in. And I'd have loved to have played some of the multiplayer already, and even in the next couple of weeks to have done that. But I just don't see any of us having that time to put into it at the moment. So Halo, it's this massive tentpole franchise from Microsoft. And already it's kind of like, just sort of...
I mean, nothing stuck, really, this year. Like, Battlefield, Call of Duty... What were they?
Yeah, shooters have had a bit of a hard year. And even, not just those, even things like Lemon Escape, which we've talked about.
Oh, yeah.
It came out, heard nothing of it since. Tons of shooters just seem to be not on the out, but just much less discussed this year, at least. Last year, tons of people, the pandemic, lockdowns, everyone inside, Warzone, I would imagine, got thousands and thousands more searches than it previously kind of did. I dabbled in Warzone a ton last year.
Yeah, I remember you did.
And suddenly that want of a first-person shooter is kind of gone, and also seems to be in terms of the media and kind of what people are discussing within gaming. So it's going to be really interesting in how Halo Infinite is received, and whether it is something that is not relegated, but is pushed into discussions next year almost. At this point, it might as well be a January game. Come out, first month of the year. Wait till after the holiday. They want to get in before the holidays, so people buy that game for people for Christmas to boost those sales, of course, and get more people coming into Game Pass. But it feels at the moment like just put it out in January. Nothing. Look, tons of stuff coming out in February. Nothing coming out in January. Be the only thing. First week of January, bam, everyone's talking about Halo for a whole month. Christmas is a weird time for shutdowns of various industries and things like that. People having time off, that you just don't have quite the same news cycle that you do for the rest of the year. So yeah, it's a weird time for it to come out, but it'd be interesting to see how it fares and what the feedback is like on that. And that you, Lucy, and I will all probably play it at some point. But next year.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fine. I feel like the one thing that's happened as we've grown older is realizing that the churn of FOMO and games media is less and less useful. Between the big companies being full of shit assholes who abuse people in all kinds of ways.
Absolutely, all of them. All of the companies have these people in. Don't be deluded in terms of any companies. These people exist on every single level, everywhere. Yeah.
But that and these games, just like last year this time was Cyberpunk 2077. Right? Like that game is still broken on consoles. And it's just like that, and it's not it also is just an example. It's not the exception to any sort of rule. Like these games don't work well when they first come out. A lot of these series have gotten more cynical, it seems, with returning to World War II because it sells better with like even less effort in the marketing to differentiate. Just like like you'll just buy it. So it's just like, well, I don't feel the need to be in the discourse. But also, when I pay attention to the discourse, 9 times out of 10, it's like for 2 weeks, people are like, "Oh, I wish this got patched," and then it's gone already. So it's like, well, what am I missing? I shouldn't have the FOMO. I'm trying not to have the FOMO, but even if I had the FOMO, what am I missing out on? Oh, yeah, it's way easier to not have FOMO when it's just like whinging about a game not
Yes.
being yet like, oh yeah, the day zero patch is 100 gigs or whatever. Like it's just not worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. A bit of a downer for us to end on this week, but we'll pick it up. We'll pick it up next week. Pure joy next week. If any of us have actually played any games, let's talk about our beers to end the episode out on. I started, so I suppose I will round mine up first. I think I'm going with the Microsoft beer, the Infinite Horizons, as my favourite beer this week from Newtown Park, Bristol Brewery. It flowed very, very nicely, and it hit lots of different flavours through that flow, culminating in a very dry sort of finish, but one which left a lovely flavour. And then invited me back to go back and say, yes, experience this whole thing again. The James and the Giant Nectaron from Arbor, it's not one note, but it kind of does everything very quickly, and that is it. It does have those sort of like sweet notes, there's peachy stone fruit kind of notes in there as well, and it sort of does it all a little bit too quickly. A little bit boozy, yeah, great, but a bit thin for 8.5%, and it's kind of, as a double IPA, it's almost as if they've tried to get the flavour profile of a much lighter beer, and successfully the flavour profile of a lighter beer, and put it in a double IPA. But what that does is make it a little bit, right. As the Newtown Park sort of said, with gooey, juicy mangoes, and I didn't necessarily get that from the Newtown Park. It wasn't kind of cloying and sort of thick. The Arbor very much had that. It was a bit like chewy, and the malts were doing a lot in terms of it being kind of like, lip smacking, kind of constantly trying to just generate a touch more saliva with it being sort of so dry. But the Arbor does a very good job of being, here are the flavours that you would kind of associate with a pale, but it's a double IPA. And then you can tell it's a double from that booziness, from these extra kind of few bits. So a well-made double IPA that does a lot more than you think it is kind of doing for the flavour profile. But the flavour of the Infinite Horizons from Newtown Park was just a little bit better for me, and that flow through as well. And every Newtown Park beer I've had is just very well made. They know how to structure their beers very, very well. So that's it for me this week. Infinite Horizons, the Microsoft beer from Newtown Park. Aadil, how about yourself?
It's tough this week. I liked both beers. The third barrel, Let Them Eat Cake, coconut brownie milk. So by the end, the cola comparison I was doing felt even more so. Just that cacao nibs, sweetness, that slight toasted flavor. And I was losing some of that more malty depth that it started with in favor of that lactose, that sweetness, that like those very cola-esque things. Even the coconut was, my palate got quite used to it, and it was still quite good and quite interesting. But I felt like by the end of it, it like shrunk rather than grew over time. Like the wrong parts of the taste, parts of the taste I liked started to fade into the background, and the parts that were more samey or like less original stuck around. So I'm gonna go with the 2-All Sir Citra dry hopped sour pale ale, mostly because it's very unique. Like I said, it has the like sour grape skins. I saved a little just to have a last sip, and yeah, the tartness lasts throughout the whole taste. But you do get that sort of tangerine type sweet citrus in there. And yeah, and just a lovely tartness that sort of stays throughout and is consistent, but isn't in the way of the other things. So just, I think, a more nuanced beer that sort of got a little more depth over time, but mostly, at least, it didn't lose itself.
Yeah.
But like close to a toss-up, to be honest. They're both very interesting beers, and if you were, unlikely, they're very different. A pale ale and a sour pale ale and a milk stout. So get the one that you feel like having of that type, and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna give the edge to the 2-All.
Nice, cool. I mean, we're quite often when we have a 2-All beer, they seem to be the one that wins out just because of the quality of the beer as well that they produce. So.
Yeah, solid.
Nice.
Exactly.
Perfect. If, dear listener or viewer, you want to chat to us about the beers that you're drinking or the games that you are playing, you can do so in lots of different ways. You can get us at TankedUpCast over on the socials. You can go to outoflives.net as well to see our faces, to see the beers that we've been drinking, and to watch our episodes, or even just listen to them over on outoflives.net, and see lots of other stuff that all of our contributors over there are putting forward and putting out there for your enjoyment. If you don't want to go to outoflives.net, but you still want to see our faces, you can go to the Out of Lives YouTube channel, or you can come and see us right now on Twitch. Out of Lives Network, pretty much everywhere, I think, on both Twitch and on YouTube.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, have a look for those. Subscribe, like, share with your friends. Do all of those fucking things. Yeah, comment. Yeah, just chat to us about what you're up to, what you're doing, what games you're playing, what beers you're drinking. You can get me at Nova_47, and you can say, hey Ben, I know you've not got any time, but this is the game that you should probably play next. Brilliant. I welcome all recommendations. Or and I've dropped off Forza Horizon, I mean, incredibly quickly. But if you would like to play with Aadil over on Xbox, he is
at the Omniarch on all of the things.
Perfect. And I'm sure, again, you'd love to hear about games that maybe you'd like to dabble in or play or look at for the First Looks stream as well, which goes up on the Twitch channel and on YouTube as well. I think they're all the places.
Yep, all the things.
They're the beers we drank. They're the games that we have played. Aadil, would you like to finish with any, prescient comments or delectable delights that people would enjoy?
Drink more beers, play more games, or don't. If you don't have the time or don't feel like it, but drink more beers. Good quality beers. Tell us about them, and tell a friend about a beer, a game, or a podcast you've enjoyed this week.
Perfect. For this week, we've been Tanked Up. Goodbye.
Ciao.
www.outoflives.net